Well, hello everybody, and a belated Happy New Year. When I came back from India in March after the last Escorted tour I did with Ultimate, I had no idea that we'd be still waiting to travel again at the beginning of 2021. However, that seems to have been the case, and the good news is I think there is a golden era of travel ahead. As soon as the vaccines are in place, the airlines are back to normal and the borders are open, we're going to be the lucky ones to be out there travelling ahead of everyone else. And most destinations will be less crowded than they've ever been before, and people will be very pleased to see us back again. So I think that seizing the moment and getting out there quickly, as soon as the restrictions are lifted, is going to reap great benefits. And so I have got quite a lot of escorted tours planned with Ultimate over the next year and a half, some of which I hope to persuade you to come on. The first of these is going to be to Sri Lanka. This is a trip that was originally going to be in September last year, but for obvious reasons couldn't run. However, has been completely rebooked for September this year, and is going to be the same trip. It's a very nice one. It starts in Colombo on the coast of the Indian Ocean, where we will be staying in a lovely colonial mansion in the heart of the old town, and have excursions out to local markets. We'll be having sundowners at sunset looking over the Indian Ocean at the Gulf Face Hotel on the first night. We've got a private tour of Geoffrey Bower's old house, and we're going to a few of the Buddhist temples in town. And there will also be some opportunities for hanging out in the local contemporary called Cafe Society, and the amazing shopping opportunities there are in the capital. Soon we will be departing there and taking the hill train from the coastal port up into the hill country, the bucolic hill country of Sri Lanka. So the train sets off from Central Station in Colombo and climbs up to Kandy. It's a beautiful ride through lush tropical jungle to start with, and then we get higher and higher into the misty mountains. Kandy is the gateway to the hill country. From there, we'll drive onto the Knuckles Range, where we'll be staying in a plantation on a tea estate, working tea estate. And then we are going to go onto an eco-wildlife lodge in a place called Gaya Olia in the wildlife park on the eastern side of the Sri Lankan hill country. And then we drive round to Kosalanda Living Heritage, which is a beautiful little eco lodge, which we're going to take over in a forest of pepper and cinnamon trees around the Ella Gap. And then we will descend back down into the coastal region and have a few days staying at the lovely Fort Bazaar Hotel in Gaul. Gaul is a wonderfully preserved and renovated ancient seaport, which has been attracting spice merchants, traders and travellers for centuries, and there's a lot of fun to be had there. Then we'll be ending the trip with a very welcome sojourn on a lovely tropical beach on the Indian Ocean coast of Sri Lanka, just north of Gaul. Then in November, I've just put together a trip with Ultimate, which I think is going to be probably the best off the beaten track tour of India that we've ever done. And so it starts in Hyderabad, city of the Nawabs and the Nizams, in central Andhra Pradesh. It's a beautiful city which not many people go to, but it has lots to recommend it. Apart from the wonderful Falak Numar Hotel that we'll be staying in up on a hill above the city, we will be visiting the mighty Golconda Fort, the superb Charminar Mosque in the heart of the souk. There's 4 roads radiating off the Charminar Mosque. One is a street of bangles, one a street of pearls, one a street of vegetables, and one a street of palaces, all of which we will be exploring while we're there. Then we fly on this brand new flight, which has only just opened, to Hampi. Hampi used to be a very difficult place to get to, and only intrepid travellers could find their way there. To my mind, it's up there with Angkor Wat and Machu Picchu as one of the must-see sites of the ancient world. And I'm very pleased that it's now possible to put on an Ultimate itinerary due to this flight from Hyderabad that runs daily, and also the opening of an evolved back gorgeous boutique hotel in amongst the ruins, which has scattered these are the glorious ruins of the 14th century Vijayanagar Empire. And there are stepwells and elephant stables and royal baths and watchtowers and no ends of temples and palaces, all scattered around this extremely evocative Dali-esque surreal landscape of hilltop tours and giant boulders along the banks of a winding river that goes through the plateau. This is the really remote height of the Deccan, right in the middle of India. And from there, we are going to drive to Badami, which is not far away. And it's a place where the Deccan Plateau suddenly drops 1,000 meters in an escarpment. And the 5th century kings of the Badami Empire carved these exquisite cave temples out of the cliffside. One's a Jain temple, one's a Buddhist cave, then there's a Vishnu and a Shiva, and the Mughals never discovered them because they're so remote. This is so well hidden up in the heights of the Deccan, and so they've never been vandalized. They've never been destroyed in any way. So they're one of the real treasures of India, 1,500 years old. So we'll scamper around the caves. There's a few other very ancient temples in the vicinity, and it's a beautiful town. It's a very old-fashioned rural market town, and a great opportunity to see traditional life in India very, very far from modernity. And there's a lake with temples around the lake, and we can walk up in the hills. It's an interesting part of central Karnataka. Then we have a spectacular drive from the Deccan right down over the spectacular Western Ghat Mountains to the coastal plain and Goa. Avoiding the cliche Goa, we're going to head off first right down to the deep south, where we'll be staying at this new property called Cavasarai, which I went and checked out last year, which is located on the most beautiful, pristine wild beach that stretches for miles, and hardly anyone ever goes there. And at one end of it is this fantastic 16th century Portuguese fort that we'll be able to go and explore on our own, as well as little local fishing villages and a bit of time to relax by the sea. And then we are going to drive up to central Goa and stay at the gorgeous Ahilya by the Sea property, which we're going to take over to have it all to ourselves. And it's located on Dolphin Bay, which is a working fishing village, working fishing beach. And the fishermen come in every morning with their catch, and the dolphins come, and you sit on the terrace having breakfast, watching the dolphins cavorting in the water. It's rather good fun. And it's also very near the capital Panjim, where we will go and have a walking tour of Funton House, which is the old Latin Quarter where all the art galleries and little sort of artist workshops are, which is very interesting. We'll also go to the new Museum of Modern Art in Goa, which is really fabulous. And we will explore the magnificent Portuguese legacy of Old Goa, Velha Goa, with these enormous basilicas and cathedrals towering out above the jungle. It looks like something out of Brazil, out of a Fitzcarraldo movie. Very, very, very good fun. And then we're also going to have a nice lazy Sunday lunch in a beach shack cafe up in northern Goa, and visit some of the local colourful markets and things. And that's not all. We then fly to Bombay from Goa, and there will be a night in the Land's End Taj Hotel in Western Bandra, which is the old Portuguese quarter of Bombay. So it fits in quite nicely with the Goan theme. And it's now become a very hip sort of seaside neighbourhood full of fashionistas, and we will be rubbing shoulders with some of them on our farewell dinner at one of my favourite restaurants in the whole of India, which is the Pali Village Cafe in Bandra. So that's all in November this year. Then in the new year, I'm going to be doing the Cuba trip that I should have been doing in February this year. So once again, it'll be an excuse to, or an opportunity to escape the winter blues of post-Christmas England by flying out to the balmy tropical climate and sunshine beaches of my favourite island in the Caribbean. I think Cuba is one of those quintessential places that need to be visited sooner rather than later, but while it still retains its unique character and has this strange ambience of being like a film set out of central casting for a novel by Graham Greene, Ernest Hemingway, or Gabriel Garcia Marquez. After Havana, which we will spend a bit of time in, driving around in old vintage convertible cars, doing some walking tours, seeing some Cuban bands in basement jazz clubs and bohemian cafes, and then we'll be eating in art decorated paladas in neighborhood cafes, and seeing some homes and studios of local artists and photographers. So we do like a lot of sort of off the beaten track hidden secrets of Havana, which will be fun. And then we will drive west to the cowboy country around Pinar del Rio and Viñales, which are the sugarloaf limestone karst mountains amongst the tobacco and sugarcane plantations on the west of the island, which is all jolly good fun. Then we'll drive south to the UNESCO heritage site and colonial gem of Trinidad, which is the most beautiful, evocative, well-preserved Spanish colonial era town on the south coast, not far from the beach, and not far from the offshore island of Cayo Macho, which we will be having a full day boat trip out to, so that we can swim amongst the coral canyons in the turquoise lagoons and enjoy a bit of Caribbean beach life, in between visiting some local fincas and estancias and some sleepy Spanish era colonial towns, a bit of horse riding if anybody wants to do it, and then we're going to Santa Clara, which is which has the famous Che Guevara Museum with the huge monolithic statue of him and a huge student population, so it's quite a fun town. And again, quite off the beaten track, not many people stop over in Santa Clara. And then we'll drive back to Havana for a couple more days of fun there before the trip ends in mid-February. Straight after that, I am joining Nick and Iris van Gryson and as tour leaders, Alistair Fothergill as expedition leader, lecturer, and Shane and Nigel Windsor as guest lecturers on the ultimate Antarctica trip to Argentina and the Antarctic in late February. So we fly out to Buenos Aires, then down to Tierra del Fuego, from where we sail on this lovely sort of boutique icebreaker cruise ship across the Drake's Passage, following the flight of seabirds like wandering albatrosses and giant pectorals to the main continental plate of Antarctica at Crystal Sound. From there we will explore by kayak and zodiac and on foot, and cavort with huge crowds of penguins and fur and leopard seals, all of which have a bit of an attitude, I believe. And also the highlights for me are going to be chances to be up close and personal with some minke and humpback whales, and the chance or possibility of spending a night on sleeping out on an ice sheet in al fresco style. Then we sail back to Argentina, and that is all happening in February next year. The hill stations, Indian hill stations trip that was due to go out in April this year probably will have to be postponed until April next year, the way things are going at the moment. But we've already made the decision to do that. So everything is fully booked for next year in case we can't go this year. And that will also happen in April at slightly different dates because Easter moves around. But it's the same itinerary. We're starting in Delhi, staying at the Imperial, the Lutyens designed hotel in New Delhi, before moving on to the wonderful off the beaten track city of Amritsar, which not many people go to because it's so close to the Pakistan border. It's sort of a dead end, but it's a magnificent city, and of course home of the very friendly and welcoming Sikhs, who will be our guides at the Golden Temple, the glittering Golden Temple at the Pool of Nectar, which is the sort of mecca of their religion, and very accessible and a lot of fun. We'll also be taking walking tours around the old city, where there's lots of mouth-watering food in street cafes and wonderful museums and things. Then we're going to drive up into the hill stations from there. First one being McLeod Ganj, where we will rub shoulders with followers of the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan court in exile, in next door Dharamsala, which is very interesting. And then we'll move into the Kangra Valley and stay at this new lodge at Wa, which we're going to take over, which looks absolutely fabulous, and we'll do lots of excursions from there to local sort of villages of cobblestone streets lined with old havelis and villas, and there's a little toy train, old Raj era narrow gauge train that goes through the hills, and there's lots of forts and excursions that we can do from there. And also it's on a working tea estate, so it's an interesting place in its own right. Then we're going to stay down at the Judge's Court in the southern valley of Kangra, on our way to the Queen of the Hill station, Shimla, which is where our road journey will end, and we'll stay at the Cecil Hotel, the first Oberoi to ever open in India, and in the footsteps of people like Baden Powell and Shashi Kapoor and Felicity Kendall and Michael Palin, we will go to the Gaiety Theatre and the Mall and have high tea up at Chapsea, which will be quite nice in the old stately home. And then to get back down to the plains, we will take the Himalayan Queen, the old imperial train that was built to take the British from Shimla back down to the plains at the end of the monsoon, and that we'll ride on that as far as Kalka and then carry it on to Chandigarh, the capital of Punjab, built by the innovative modern architect Le Corbusier, and that's where that tour ends, back in Delhi. Now, I haven't been able to do much travelling this year, like most of you, but I did get one assignment, which was very nice, to Romania, to go and work on a film with a Romanian film crew. And it was my 5th visit to this extraordinary country, only 3 hours from London, with forest full of wolves and bears, and the serene Danube Delta wetlands, and the romantic forests and castles of Transylvania, and these timeless villages with horse and carts and hand scything, and extraordinary roadside stalls selling foraged wild mushrooms and sea buckthorn and artisan cheeses. I mean, it's non-stop fun. It's a very, very interesting country. Anyway, I discovered lots of new things out there on this recent trip, and so I'm working with Ultimate on putting a very, very interesting tour of Romania together for summer next year. So watch this space for that. And then there are lots of other tours that Ultimate have on their itinerary for 2021, for the rest of this year. In Argentina, Nick and Iris van Gryson are leading an equine adventure, which will be a chance to ride like a gaucho while living on a cattle ranch, estancia, in the western part of Patagonia, coupled with some cultural excursions around Buenos Aires, which is a charming city, very, very, very worthwhile spending a few days in. And there's an optional extension right down to the glaciers in the far south of Patagonia, right down where Argentina ends. So lots to do out there. Then Louisa Thompson is from Ultimate, is leading an escorted tour to the Kingdom of Nepal, also in October, and this will include time in the Hindu temple, Buddhist stupa, and imperial palace riches of Kathmandu itself, the capital, and then right down in the terrain, the subtropical jungles of southern Nepal, riding elephants and jeeps and kayaks in search of Indian one-horned unicorn rhinoceroses, and other fauna in the jungle. Then there'll be some day trekking in the foothills of the Himalayas in the Pokhara Valley, followed by some walking tours around Bhaktapur, which is a beautiful old medieval city, one of the highlights of the Kathmandu Valley. Marie-Therese Hill has a couple of river cruises towards the end of the year. One of them in Kerala on a 9-room converted rice barge from Alleppey up to Cochin, which will be a lovely thing to do in November. And she also has a Magic of Advent cruise along the Danube from Vienna to Nuremberg at the end of the year with Douglas Skeggs, which promises to be a feast of winter festivities with Christmas markets and old castles and river landscapes and lots of food and wine. So that'll be quite a nice way to end the year. Anyway, all full details of all these trips, all these tours, mine and the others, are all on the Ultimate website. I think it's going to be a great time to travel. I think a lot of us are really looking forward to getting back on the road again. So hopefully see some of you out there later this year and all through next. Happy travels.